Let us welcome JEANINE Wilson, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, everyone. I did catch some people walking out a little bit frustrated, so I'm very excited to bring up my panel members. Excuse me, so please feel free to come up, ladies. Okay, I'm really glad that not everyone left, because when I saw people leaving, I got a bit of a fright. But let me introduce my panel members today. So, the first we have, there on the end, Induvu Manyonga. She is the CEO of Federation Employees Mutual Assurance Company. This company provides workmen's compensation cover to the construction industry in terms of the Compensation for Occupational Industries and Disease Act. Induvu is also chairs the FEM Education Foundation, which aims to make a real and significant impact in improving education in South Africa through strategic partnerships. She has 22 years of experience within financial services, spanning product development, pricing, financial modeling, valuations, and consulting. She has held many executive roles and has served as non-executive director to a number of organizations. And the next part's my favorite. She is the first Black South African woman to qualify as an actuary within Assa. She has won many awards, and she embraces the opportunity to mentor others and to assist those studying with their actuarial exams. She is married to Howard and has 3 children and 3 dogs. Welcome. Next to her is Karen Mwanga. She's currently the head of the actuarial control function at Old Mutual Insure, holding a full practicing certificate in short-term insurance. She is a qualified actuary with more than 7 years' experience in the corporate actuarial environment. She has a lot of experience in reserving, capital assignments, SAM, also reporting, and IFRS 17 implementation in South Africa and beyond. At Old Mutual Insure, she is heavily involved in the OMI and ASABA partnership, which primary objective is to drive more EE candidates in the short-term insurance space. In addition, because that's not all, she leads the Actuarial Job Family Subcommittee that looks after the social aspects of the OMI 80+ actuarial staff. Welcome. And finally, we have Furu Mashapa. She was last week away in Belfast at the One Young World Summit, and so she's the ambassador for them. She's an actuarial specialist. She's involved in risk, money, and insurance content creator. Search her name on YouTube and you'll find it all. She's a motivational speaker, and her interests are people, money, foods, and arts. Her life motto is, "The learning never ends." Welcome. I'm going to have to see. Can you all see me? Okay, great. Thanks for being here. So I'm going to start off with you, Furu, and I'm going to ask you what transformation means to you personally. And what would you define transformation according to your experience?
Okay, is this on? Hi everyone, thank you for having me. So I think for me, transformation really speaks to representation. When I look at my senior leadership within my organization, I want to see myself represented there, and any other person, regardless of their age, their gender or race, when they look at the people in positions of power, they also see themselves represented. And it's not just about us filling in the numbers or us ticking boxes, but it's also about creating an environment where people are allowed to show up authentically, and in their own authenticity, we empower them to still thrive.
Thank you. Karen, I'm going to ask you, what has worked, or what has been effective, or what could work well in the wider, to effectively transform our profession?
Thanks, Janine. So I think what has worked within the Assa profession is, we have a different number of issues that cause essentially the disparity and why we're talking about transformation today. And I think Assa has tried to essentially target each one. There's one around financial needs and one around lack of mentorship or just being previously disadvantaged and needing more teaching, etc. So I think from a funding perspective, initiatives like the SADP in the wider Assa framework have really helped to support students who need funding through universities. And those do allow, include things like mentorship, and it's been quite a successful program. If anything, we just need to expand that program. And imagine if we funded every student, say from second year onwards, who've proved themselves, the throughput would be a lot better than what we're currently seeing, in your honors class. With your first year class is very transformed, your honors class is something else. So we're losing good people in the process, we just need support. Things like the academy, tuition courses, and the funding also does help there. Just having people to teach and assist students to learn the concepts and prove themselves. I'm also seeing now there's also like AIM, which is trying to essentially link students, giving them vacation work opportunities. All of those initiatives help to bridge the gap, what the work environment is gonna be like. Asaba has been quite instrumental, from mentorship. They also have got high school initiatives. AWC, driving the gender, transformation. It's been really amazing. I think the progress there has been great. But what could we focus on to do better? I strongly think as actuaries, with the data that we have, we should be able to at least set some targets. I know we can be wrong, but we need to set some form of expectation. When are we going to transform as Assa? Is it going to be, if we see the trends, that we are producing, say the growth of the numbers is 10% a year of more black people, etc., or the other, races or gender, whatever field we're tracking, can we project forward to say, at this stage, Assa is going to look like the demographics of South Africa? And if we're not happy with the number, say it's 100 years, then we do something about it now. We become more aggressive. And we can be wrong. Things like COVID can happen that set us back, but we can explain why we're not meeting those targets. But I think until we stretch ourselves, we can never really get there. We are always making progress, but can we, make ourselves more accountable and challenge ourselves? I think that can be one area we can do better. Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Well, I'm going to ask you now. What do you believe your role as someone like you, gender-wise, race-wise, age-wise, around ensuring that the profession and work settings are sufficiently transformed?
Yeah, firstly, just hello to everybody. It feels a bit cool to just start with answering the question without greeting, and it's great to see some familiar faces as well within the crowd. So just specifically in the context of the role that someone like me can play, I think it's multifaceted. I suppose I also head up an organization, so perhaps I've got a bit more leverage in terms of the direct influence I can have when it comes to things like policies and practices within our organization and what we're doing directly. But just even as an individual, and just reflecting on my own journey of becoming an actuary, many, many years ago, I'm obviously the oldest in this panel, so when I became an actuary, there was definitely not this diverse a crowd of people who were sitting at Assa conventions. So I think, sharing our journeys as individuals makes a difference in itself, because sometimes people just want someone to relate to. They want to know that if Ndibuo, who comes from Venda, and so does my colleague Furuferani there, lots of you, most of you have never even heard where Venda is at, but it is a place in Limpopo. If I can do it, then so can they. It's also about me being able to reflect on my own experiences and challenges and making sure that I use whatever influence I can to address those for other people who are coming along, right? And it requires me to be quite self-reflective and to be authentic in doing that analysis, to say what are some of the challenges that I faced when I was on my route to becoming an actuary. From not being able to identify anyone else who looked like me, who sounded like me, who came from where I came from catching a plane for the first time to go to UCT, never having been on a plane before, and sitting in there being scared, from getting to UCT and sitting in Rob Dorrington's 1 in 3 class, and I was sandwiched between two Jewish gentlemen, and I was looking and thinking, sure, the odds are definitely very much against me here. From not being able to, my parents had both gotten some form of education, but had never had the sort of exposure and experience that I had of having to go out. So it was also even just very difficult to have a conversation with someone at home who could relate to what it is that I was going through. And actually getting to see some of my peers who did not progress through the studies, not because they were less smart than I was. I didn't think I was necessarily the smartest person, but because some of these psychosocial issues overshadow the IQ aspects of things. So I think it's important for those of us who've been through those experiences to reflect on those and to say, how do we design programs, processes, interventions that really address some of those barriers that could impede on people's ability to actually qualify or to study or to get into the workplace as well. So I think it's most probably a combination of both of those aspects of using my own experience, but also then using my platform to actually make a difference.
Fantastic, thank you. So to lead on from what Ndube was saying there about within the corporates, do you believe that corporations have a duty to lead by example to ensure transformation happens across the industry?
Yes, that's a resounding yes. I definitely believe that. I think for there to be a change, we all have to start doing our part, and we cannot afford to wait for the next person to do it. So as an organization or as a corporation, when we see that there is an issue, it's important for us to start addressing our own sort of backyard before, we look at the next person to say, but are you seeing this issue? Are you going to solve this issue? And for there to be like a change in the broader business community, we all have to do our part individually, but when we come together from different parts of the business world, when we come together, that's when we see change. And I think a good motivation for organizations to do that is also the fact that at the heart of each organization is people. And for you to unlock your next level success or to bring solutions that are really relevant to the customers that you're serving at the end of the day, you sort of need to put transformation as priority. Because how do you solve problems that people you don't understand are actually facing? You need to bring along the people who are experiencing those issues on a day-to-day basis to be able to say, we have the solution, but is it practical for the circumstances that you guys are living under? So I definitely believe we all have to do our part. Yeah.
Thank you. And I mean, the power of diversity in a room it's huge, and so agreed. Yeah. Ndube, I'm going to ask you another question. What have been the implications of the transformation drive to you personally, or those around you in your day-to-day work or career?
Yeah, so for myself, I suppose when I think about transformation and the impact on my life, it's always helpful for me to just also reflect on the transformation within my own family, if I look at it from that perspective. So I always start off by thinking about my grandmother, Bonya Dombo, who was in a rural Venda in Chakuma. That's where she was born. And she never set a foot in school for a single day in her life because of circumstances and the structural issues that South Africa faced. We didn't have a lot of resources, and definitely where there were resources, they were not spent on women or girls. The Venda perception was that education could make you mad as a girl. And where there are resources, let's spend them on men because that would be a good return on our investment. So she never went to school. She was the fourth and last wife of my grandfather. And with 5 children, she worked in kitchens. She brewed traditional beer. She did a lot to try and make some form of a living. And my mom said, she could just do an X in terms of signing her name. And eventually my mom, who managed to go to school, because of all those savings that my grandmother put together, at least taught her to write her name. So she could then write her name. And then comes the next generation, which is my mother, and where I indicated that because of the will that my grandmother had, and there were some changes that were already starting to come through in terms of acceptability of girl children actually going to school, but all that money that my grandmother saved helped take my mom to school, right? But she was also then limited in terms of how far she could then take it. During her era, it was, you either became a teacher or you became a nurse, both of which are very commendable professions, but the reality was that that was all she was limited to, was to choose one of those two professions. And then fast forward to myself, and then I think, I definitely had more opportunity than both of them, and I can definitely see a generational progression in terms of transformation. Where I managed to go and study and get the qualification that I had. And I do sometimes think if my grandma was to wake up now, may her soul rest in peace, she'd also be faint and die again, because this was most probably not a, not a reality that she could have perceived based on the constraints that she was facing at that time. So in a way, there is, at least from one generation to the next, you're seeing some form of transformation and change and inclusion within the economy that's happening that wasn't there before. It still feels like it's taking a long time, and although my story can be shared by many, there are still many in my generation who still have the same experience my grandmother had, which is not a good thing, and it's a blight on our humanity that we still have those types of things going on. But if I maybe take it to a little bit more detail in terms of directly myself and transformation, I must say, just in the context of having benefited from programs and incentives that other people put in place to try and help me along the way, whether it was, getting my first university bursary with the Thabo Mbeki Crossroads Foundation, which was aimed at trying to transform and offer people an opportunity who didn't used to have an opportunity before. Then I got my old mutual bursary, which over and above just providing financial assistance, also again trying to address issues of diversity, coupled that with mentorship as well, right? So that really helped in terms of the mentorship aspect that came with that. And then I reflect on my career progression that, I found myself engaging with organizations that were intentful about wanting to transform and being very specific about the fact that they want to transform leadership, they want to transform the demographics of their employees. And I was able to take advantage of that, whether it was because I had some close sponsors in that regard, so I could definitely see the impact of transformation in my life. Although to some extent, sometimes it did feel a little bit like a double-edged sword, because in and amongst the programs, the incentives, you could forget that I'm actually a capable human being who's here because I'm actually good at what I do, right? And all these things are just trying to level the playing field in terms of my ability to access these opportunities. But yeah, that's maybe just sharing some of the specific aspects from a transformation perspective that have directly impacted in my life as well. And I myself now try and focus on where can I make a difference from a transformation perspective. We often see the symptoms of some things that are more structural, that are impeding our ability to transform. Part of that could be the quality of our education, and I think that's a real issue in terms of the quality of education, which is why we set up the FEM Education Foundation, which I chair. And yes, we give bursaries, but even more than giving bursaries, what we appreciate is that the majority of South African children will attend a public schooling system. And there's no long-term sustainable impact if all we do is take out the good ones and put them in better schools. What we really need to be doing is addressing those schools that have got deficiencies. So, we've put about 750 million rand behind that initiative to really say, how do we use our monies and funds for good to address some of the real structural issues that are preventing the transformation that we want to see. appreciating that from our perspective as well, transformation should not be a zero-sum game, and hopefully that's not how people see it, that, other people can only gain if I lose, but that ultimately it's in everyone's interest that we have a transformed economy in which all South Africans can participate, because if we don't do that, we face a social time bomb. So maybe, yeah, that's just a few words from me. Thanks.
Thank you, and we're really lucky to have you in our profession, but also in our country, and I'm grateful to those that did offer you the opportunity to be here, because that's changing our worlds now, so thank you so much. I am going to open to the floor, so if anyone has any questions, please put them on the Q&A and I will get through to them. It can be to this panel or to the other one, but whilst you all get your questions ready, I'm just going to give one last question to Karen. So similar sort of line is, as an individual like you, and maybe what I'm hoping from this question is trying to give other people an idea as well. What can you do personally as who you are to help with the transformation in the society and wider?
Thank you, Janine. So I think what I can do personally is, if I start home, is just to pass on the learnings. It's a lot easier, I suppose, for, I guess, people who look like me to approach me to ask, how did you do it? And to actually take the time to sit with them to say, maybe I had to put, it's a fellowship for general insurance or whatever, you have to put this X amount of time, or to listen to their needs, maybe they need a space to study, or if they come through, say, okay, we've had, for example, a graduate actually at my workplace who wanted a laptop, and to actually just to meet them where they need. When they do start working, they will be able to afford it. But between now and then, they need to just complete the year, to actually meet them at their needs. So I think just using the roles I do have to make an impact where possible, whether it's raising these needs to the higher leaders, or just to pass on the learnings that I do have from just my journey. What did I have to do extra to pass exams, to qualify? How did I make the time? Because there's always going to be needs at home, especially as a Black daughter. There's so much that you have to do. So just how do you make it happen? And also, I guess just also making an environment that allows people to show up as themselves at work and to bring their full selves at work. I think it's one thing to have the profession look like South Africa, or I guess corporates to look more transformed from a numbers perspective, but if voices can't be heard and if people can't be themselves, then we have not really achieved what we're aiming to be. We want people to speak their minds, bring their ideas, bring their experiences, so that we have fuller and richer solutions to offer our clients, and that way we can be more relevant to South Africa. And I guess just keeping our companies honest in any room that we're in, that we strive for inclusion and diversity in all decisions made. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to grab some questions from the Q&A, and I'm going to ask Katlego to hop if necessary, but I've got a couple here. So yeah. I do see that. I'm going to maybe give you guys this.
Just while Janine is passing around the mic, we will allow you to ask questions. We're going to open the floor to questions. There's roving mics. We've got our event assistants who will bring a mic to you. So if you'd like to ask a question to this panel or the panel that was here before, just put your hand up. We'll get the mic to you and you can go ahead. There's one question right there.
Okay.
Good day, everyone. My name is Tsietsi Ngobese. I'm the CEO and actual analyst of Resolve for X. So to me, it's more of a comment and thanking the amazing work that is being done. So as Resolve for X, what we do, we run the hashtag Become an Actuary program. We adopt schools and then we teach kids maths from grade 4 to 12 and also teach their parents maths so they can help them with homeworks. So trying to increase the pipeline of actuaries. So through the program, this year alone, we have 543 students studying actuarial science coming from the program. So the support we're getting from Assa and Assa and companies coming on board to do what you call the corporate visit, where actuaries would come to a school, talk about the profession, or give a math session for a day where learners can relate and see like what kind of actuaries look like, and are they normal people like you and I, that kind of approach. So it has a very significant impact on the kids. I was brought into the profession, but SADP and Asaba coming to our school telling us about the profession for the first time, then I joined in. So now we are proud that we have more kids following up on the pipeline, so we can have that impact. And also as part of the sustainability model, we are manufacturing toilet papers, where for every pack we make, 1 rand goes towards funding the program, so we can have more actuaries coming in. We call it toilet paper with purpose. But most importantly, is to say we need to work together to inspire the next generation of actuaries. And each and every one of us here has an important role to go to any school or any public space just to give them information about what is an actuary and how to become an actuary. You never know the impact that it might have. So that is the transformation agenda, so that we can achieve the 1 million actuaries in the country. Thank you.
Thank you. See, there are quite a few hands in the audience. So you've got a microphone at the back there?
Okay, cool. I guess I just wanted to get an understanding. Janine found, me and my colleague walking out of here enraged earlier on. We were just, I guess you're thinking around having the 2 separate panels, one that just had only white men. We literally walked in and we were like, what's going on here? So maybe just, give us your thought process, and then, having the change, and I guess what were you trying to achieve, and I guess, do you think you have? Did you want both sides? I guess I just want to understand.
So remember, when it comes to transformation and inclusion and diversity, it's not someone needs to take someone else's place at the table. It's everyone's invited to the table. I think it's really important that we do hear from both genders and both races, and all races actually. When I say two, sorry, that was terrible. And I think it's really important. What we wanted to do is, the panels didn't know about each other, so they didn't know the makeup of the 2 panels, and we didn't want to tell them because we didn't want the way that they answered the questions to be different. I think it's really important when you are, as a white man, trying to say, look, I care about transformation. People don't take it the same way as if a black female had said it. And so I think it's really important, because all 3 of the panelists we had before really deeply cared about transformation. And I think what we wanted to show is that it's got to be all of us bringing everyone to the table, and not just some of us bringing everyone to the table. Loads of hands.
Hello. Hi, and after that, the white man stands up again. That's funny, isn't it? Yeah, it was a little weird, but I think I get it. I want to ask a question about blind spots, sort of touching on the thread that Peter started with. But first of all, we clapped after the toilet paper thing, and I think you missed an opportunity. Like at the start of hard lockdown, that's when you needed to go big on the toilet paper thing. Oh, right, eggs is the new thing, right. And so I want to ask about blind spots, and one of mine clearly is that I need to get better at saying black names, so sorry ma'am, I'm going to butcher your name now, but Leave Wowu, I felt like we should clap after your story. It was just so inspirational, in 2 generations, going from being uneducated, a teacher, and now in your position of privilege. So I'm going to start clapping now. Who wants to join? Thanks. Finally, my question, blind spots. I think it's something we all need to work on. I've been trying to be more mindful around the financial challenges, and we've touched around the resources, that it's about tuition, but it's about more than that, the hands up and the assistance. I want to ask about the cultural aspects as well. Like, what can we do? Where is the office still feel a little bit like an old white boys club, and where we can be more inclusive around office culture? Any thoughts on on that from any panelists.
Why don't you take the question next?
Okay.
Someone new in there. What do you think?
Yeah, I'll definitely touch on that. So I think, let me maybe give my own experience coming into corporate. You from vendor, like Ndibuo, and in your culture, you are told, you know, you don't raise your voice when you're talking to adults. And I remember just laughing with my friends when we started working to say, we have this thing where we put war next to like an elder's name, right? So you go into the office and you are talking to your manager who's way older than you, and it's very apparent that they're older than you. And you have to have a conversation with this person as if you two are of the same age, which is very contradictory to how you were raised. All your life you've been told, respect your elders. But this person expects you to tell him when he's wrong, but you are also raised to believe that old people are always right. You don't say that to old people. So it took a while, and I think having mentors really, really helped to sort of get me out of my head and to say, this is the new world of work. And for people to know how you feel, or for them to be able to help you where you need assistance, you need to be able to have a conversation. And just supporting people and encouraging them to have those difficult conversations is important. And I think if we are to achieve inclusivity and say everybody can show up as they are, then as the person who is saying everybody can show up as they are, you need to be willing to have a difficult conversation and understand that people have different backgrounds. Culture plays a significant role, just like sitting in a meeting and trying to fight against everything that you've been taught. Like this is how you behave as a girl child, a black girl child. So we need to be able to have those difficult conversations and encourage people to do so and provide a safe space for such conversations, because something that might be very trivial to you can be a huge obstacle for someone to simply come to you and say, I don't think this is, you know, how we are meant to go about this particular issue. It might like take a lot, so you have to be receptive to different views as well. But yeah, I think opening conversations and allowing people to express their views without any fear of retaliation or, yeah.
I just want to add to that, maybe a little bit differently around. We've got base assumptions that we think, oh, we've given someone a contract, they'll be able to come to work, they'll be able to maneuver around corporate. So I think things like, how are you going to come to work? How long does it take you? You know, what time do you need to leave to go back home? Do you have the support you need? You know, I think we might have just to reach out more. But I also flip that on the other side. I mean, if we had any graduates or anyone in the room, that we also need to be willing to be transformed. We also need to be willing to reach out for help and not be scared. I do feel there are a number of people, a number of corporates that we are reaching out to say, you know, we've got all these platforms, all these initiatives, but we also need to come out of our shelves and say, I need assistance, I need coaching sessions to get to that next level. But I think if we actually try and reach out to understand, you know, are they comfortable from the way they travel to work, etc. Just something simple, things like that.
I agree with everything that they said. I also think it's important that we reflect on the fact that even between Furu and myself, who are both from Venda, we might have very different approaches and ways of doing things. So for me, there's no substitute for building relationships directly with people because, it does not necessarily mean that, people are homogeneous groups just because they come from that area or whatever. People are still individuals. They're still facing their own specific challenges. And I feel that there's no substitute from getting to know people and having those conversations directly. And measure yourself on intent. It doesn't mean that the conversation is always going to be perfect. There might be stumbling blocks along the way, but if your intent and your heart is in the right place, then I think the other person on the other side will also receive it as such. But no substitute from knowing people individually.
Do we have time for one more question?
Yeah, I think we do.
Hello?
Yes.
Hi everyone. My question is actually twofold and it's directed to Ndibuo. First of all, thank you for sharing your story and for the work that you're already doing in terms of actively trying to fix the whole transformation issue. My first question is, being the first of your kind in your field, how would you say you navigated climbing the corporate ladder without a point of relatability, like someone higher up to look up to, right? Someone who looks like you to look up to in corporate. And the second part of my question is, I'm not sure if you've experienced this in your journey, but if you have, how did you navigate imposter syndrome? How did you deal with that? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I think your first question was, how did I navigate climbing up the corporate ladder without someone who looks out like me? And the second one is on the imposter syndrome. I think in terms of the first question, I must say that even in as much there were no other maybe black African female actuary, there were a lot of benevolent people in my circle who acted as mentors and coaches, right? And therein was maybe one life lesson is that you can learn from other people even if they don't necessarily look exactly like you do, because some of our struggles, aspirations are very common, regardless of color or race or age or whatever it is. So I definitely did have some great people who supported me in my own journey. But what was also very important was work on myself. I used to always relate the story about how I had a quarter life crisis when I qualified. So I was about 24, going to 25. I thought qualification was going to be the panacea that solved all my life problems. The day I get that paper, I will not have another problem in life. And it didn't happen. And I almost had an anticlimax. I know, it seems a little bit blasé. It's not as blasé as I'm saying. It really was just that thing of, now I'm qualified. Why are all my problems not going away, etc.? They're still there. So there was something there about needing to work on myself. And part of working on myself was also actually answering that question of, do I want to climb the corporate ladder? Because that doesn't necessarily have to be everybody's path or route, right? Success can look different ways for different people, and obviously sometimes because of pressures and other things like that, you might think that that's the route I have to go because that's what everybody is expecting me to do. So it was quite important for me to go through that work. From a self perspective, to say what exactly is it that I want to do, what do I want to align myself with, where do I want to go from a career perspective, and how do I leverage off and learn from other people, even though they might not look exactly the same way that I do. We've actually got a lot more that connects us than things that separate us. That's the strange thing about life, actually. And it wasn't a destination. That's still a journey. It's still a journey even now. That aspect of constantly just working on myself, and maybe it links quite nicely to the imposter syndrome issue, which is where I'm saying, sometimes with all the good intentions around, we want to transform, we want to get EE candidates, and whatever it is. What sometimes can happen is that if you're on the receiving end of that, you can get lost in that and actually forget you're a competent, capable human being, right? And sometimes you think other people are thinking something when you walk into a room that maybe they're thinking I'm not good enough, maybe they're not, maybe they're not, and maybe they are. And either way, what do you know about yourself that is actually holding true regardless of which room you're going into? And that was actually something that maybe I only started becoming comfortable in my skin about in my mid-30s towards late 30s, no revealing my age, but it took time. I wish I'd gotten there in my 20s. I can honestly say I wasn't. I wasn't there, and it's still work, and it's also about personality types, because I think generally, before you even add the race issue, gender issue, etc., most people go into actuarial science were perfectionists by nature. We are used to being very successful in studies and all, so we can be very hard on ourselves at any rate before you add all of these other dynamics that come with it. So work on myself was absolutely important. And I'm a strong believer in therapy, and that therapy doesn't only need to happen when things have crashed. continuously just checking in and having someone else who can hold you to account, who can also just, question and probe is very helpful. But if therapy is not for you, then just find an accountability partner who can really help you with that type of thing, or someone you can really have real conversations with. So I don't have any magic answer other than it took a lot of work. Okay.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to make a comment on imposter syndrome, because sometimes people think that imposter syndrome is something that afflicts those who are perhaps less represented in a situation. I think sometimes imposter syndrome affects us all. I look around a room of young actuaries who've qualified as this old grey-haired man, and their understanding of statistics is exceptional compared to mine, for example. And so sometimes when those topics come up, I feel I have imposter syndrome. So I think we need to recognize that each of us, and I think as Ndivo said, is we need to understand ourselves, and we need to have confidence in ourselves that we're not here because we are faking it, we are here because we actually have a right to be here.
We have run out of time, but we're going to break the rules a little bit because there was a question that came in before we ran out of time. So like in the government departments, if you get there before they close the door, they'll still serve you. We're gonna do the same thing here. Please, ma'am, go ahead.
Oh, thank you for that. I hope I can wrap it up strongly. So I had a question for Ndivi, but I think you've touched on some aspects of it in your last response. But I think when you mentioned when you said something about the structures that assist with transformation being a double-edged sword, for me personally, I found it a little bit triggering because I've had different experiences with the structures that I put in place. And one of them was, I remember there's a time when Assa was introducing the academic support. And there were instances where I'd get invited to the courses, and a friend of mine who's a white female wouldn't. And we walked the same journey, had the same struggles, would complain together, study together, but in those moments when I'd get the invite to get assistance and she wouldn't, I'd find like, okay, fine, I understand what the purpose of this is, but I'd find it a bit triggering in the sense that, what is it about me? Given the fact that I've walked the same path, I've got my degree, have the same job title, that says that I need extra academic support. And I think the same thing translates to even your BEEs and your female leadership programs. In as much as I appreciate what they're there for, I think there's a danger in them robbing the people who they benefit of that sense of belonging when they do get to those positions. So in as much as with me, I've worked through it because I've had experiences that have validated how I've gotten to where I've gotten. For someone who's still walking the journey, how do those same support structures or those same systems put together structures that also, in as much as support you in terms of getting there, I suppose also validate the fact that you belong because you got there on your own as well. That's my question. I know there's a question.
Okay. You can add. Yeah, so, I think you've touched on very valid points that maybe a lot of us can say we experienced in one form or other in our lives, right? It's like there's almost a sense that you need this extra support, you need this, you need that, because somehow you can't do it otherwise. And I am a firm believer on judging people on intent, and I think sometimes that intent was the right intent, but it maybe had unintended consequences in terms of its rollout. And maybe as corporates, we also just always need to challenge ourselves to say, as we design these programs and these interventions, have we actually had the conversations with the intended recipients to say, is this actually what will help, or what could be the possible impact or implication of this type of thing if we roll out? Because sometimes we just happily start doing what it is that we think these people want, or these EE candidates want. And I think it's also incumbent upon ourselves on the receiving end to also feel brave enough to give that feedback, right? Because sometimes if people don't know, then they just don't know. They might not be aware of that. And maybe we're doing these courses and we're still smiling anyway, and our managers are asking us and we're saying, yes, it was very good, because maybe you don't feel you've got a voice to say otherwise, to say, that was a very bad idea. Why were you doing that? So, so sometimes I think we ourselves maybe just need to just say, can we give that feedback? And maybe it might not be for our benefit because you've gone through the process, but at least the person coming after you might not need to go through the same thing. But part of that feedback has to be about, let's make sure that as corporates you're designing courses and interventions with input from those people who are going to be recipients of those courses and interventions as well. So maybe that's my one point, but I do think that a lot of corporates have got the right intent. It's just that, in the execution, there's unintended consequences that maybe reinforce certain things, in fact, that they think they're trying to solve.
Okay, great. Thank you everyone for coming to our panel discussion, but more importantly to all our panel members. If we can just give them another big round of applause for coming up here.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Ndivuo. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Fulu. Thank you, Janine. Thank you, Kat. Thank you, Peter, Enrico, and Charles, I think it was.
Well done. That's impressive.
That was close. We're going to take a break. That was really eye-opening, guys. I really enjoyed it. And I think it's like a good story. It started off and we had a few question marks about what was going on. But as the story unfolded, we understood the rationale of why you had arranged this discussion in the way you did, and we appreciate it. We're going to take a 30-minute break, and we will return to Bill Gallagher with a focus on professional matters. Professional justice is our next discussion. Thank you, everybody.